What they said under oath is surprising, but let's first go into this real quick. And before we do, please click that like button and share this with someone, because this is going to get strange. Here we go.
Right, now I'd like to introduce our witnesses. Our first witness is Lieutenant Ryan Graves. He's the Executive Director of Americans for Safe Aerospace. Lieutenant Graves is also a former U.S. Navy F-18 pilot with his own UAP experience. The next witness, David Grush, is a former senior intelligence officer with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency and was a senior technical advisor for UAP issues. And finally, retired Navy Commander David Fravor, squadron leader who worked as a naval aviator for 18 years. Mr. Fravor has his own UAP experience, known as the TikTok event. I look forward to hearing from all three of you today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9G, the witnesses will please stand and raise their right hands. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record show that all the witnesses answered in the affirmative. You may be seated. We appreciate you all being here today and look forward to your testimony.
Okay, I pause it right there because now he's just going to explain how to press the button if you want to talk and all that stuff, all the extra stuff. So, but that's interesting. They swore them in, so right now they're going to tell absolute truth. So from here on out, according to them, and they're all in agreement on this, all three witnesses, they're all going to explain stuff that is bizarre, just strange. And I'm not just saying that because it's behind me here. I think we're living in some amazing times. And so the next thing is a new story about an event from Ryan Graves, the pilot that is on the witness stand here. And so let's get right into that before we do any commentary.
My next question would actually be for Mr. Graves. Can you please explain to me in detail the event that occurred at Vandenberg Air Force Base?
Certainly. In the 2003 timeframe, a large group of Boeing contractors were operating near one of the launch facilities at Vandenberg Air Force Base when they observed a very large 100-yard sided red square approach the base from the ocean and hover at low altitude over one of the launch facilities. This object remained for about 45 seconds or so before darting off over the mountains. There was a similar event within 24 hours later in the evening. This was a morning event, I believe 8:45 in the morning. Later in the evening, post-sunset, there were reports of other sightings on base, including some aggressive behaviors. These objects were approaching some of the security guards at rapid speeds before darting off. And this is information that was received through one of the witnesses that have approached me at Americans for Safe Aerospace.
Was this documented in any official form, whether it was a police blotter?
Yes, they had official documentation and records from the event that the witness held over the years.
And I'm not going to ask you to do it right now for time reasons, but you would be able to sketch what was witnessed, correct? And have you seen that before on any other equipment and or during your flight time?
I have not seen what they've described. This object was estimated to be almost the size of a football field, and I have not seen anything personally that large.
Not seen anything the size of a giant square in the sky, the size of a football field coming at you. They're saying this under oath. What is going on here? I think that would just make me uncomfortable if I was among the audience. By the way, Matthew, you know who's among the audience? You know who these guys are back here? I'm going to pull up a quick screen cap real quick to show the widescreen. Tell me who you see in the background. This is really interesting to me. Look at this. Who do you see on the far right beside David Grutch, who's in the middle there? On his right, you can't talk right now because I don't have your audio on. I don't know how to do that. But and to his left, there's two prominent, well-known guys that are to the right and left. If you know in the audience who these two guys are, let me hear in the comments then that is who these people are, and I'm going to come back to Matthew to see if he knows who they're. I'm going to put you on the spot, Matthew. Who do you think these two guys are right here?
I forget the guy on the left, the older gentleman, but I know that's got to be Jeremy Corbell
Yeah.
there on the right. He's unmistakable. That guy is like a spitfire. So but I have seen the other guy. I think he's actually done some shows with Jeremy, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're in the same kind of a clique. Why don't
Yeah.
you tell me, who is that?
That is George. Is it Knapp? I know it's one of the Georges. I
You
forget
don't know yourself?
I know it's George. George something. George Knapp. Yeah, see, Deborah knows that in the chat. I knew it was Knapp. I knew that. So I think it's interesting that somehow they got in on this thing. How does a normal person just get in there? I don't know. I think that's fascinating. But they are well-known, I guess, journalists. At least Jeremy's calling himself that now in a recent interview. So, but George Knapp has been a journalist for a long time, trying to cover this stuff. So that's interesting. So, what do you make of this? This I want to use the keywords that they're using here, and they are saying an aggressive. I can't say it with a straight face. An aggressive red square, the size of a football field, is coming at the military officers. Oh man, it's hard to keep a straight face and say that, but
That's all right. I think the aggressive adjective might like make it funny somehow, because the idea that it's like an angry, like bearing red square. Yeah,
are we on Sesame Street? This episode is brought to you by Angry Red Square.
what color is this? What shape is this? I don't know, but it's angry.
It's okay. Enough. I gotta compose myself.
I think it's wild. I think, but I imagine people have seen such a UFO, such a UAP. If we're not going to use that outdated terminology, saying
man.
UFO, it's like I'm in yesteryear. No, it was a UAP, and that UAP was massive. Apparently,
It was.
It's funny because I read something similar out of the book "Piercing the Cosmic Veil," which
Interesting.
is a book that Joe Jordan put together with a guy named Jason December. And Jason's UFO account had UFOs the size of football fields. And I believe he was trying to tell other people, hey, like, look, they're here. There's, these massive things. How do you not see them? And the people that he was talking to couldn't see what he could see. So there is, that's something that we've kind of talked about before, but there's this weird aspect where they can be detected by whatever sensors they want to be detected, and they can be seen by whoever they want to be seen. So they can show up as a square, a propane tank. They could be anything you want. One of the weirder ones, and maybe we'll get to this clip that they had mentioned, was that there was a sphere, and inside of it was a gray-black cube.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. There are some occult connections to the black cube itself.
Interesting. We're going to get there, though. Actually, we have
we'll
that
get there.
clip.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's talk about it when it comes.
Okay. Let's not jump the gun.
So this next clip is about corporations. Apparently, not just fighter pilots are seeing these things, but your average Joe pilot that's flying commercial airlines. And the airlines are telling them to be quiet. Check this out.
Okay, and follow-up, in regards to the reporting procedures that Mr. Garcia had addressed on, as well as Representative Burchett, with the FAA, to your understanding, pilots that are seeing this, commercial airline pilots, are they receiving cease and desist letters from corporations for coming forward with information in regards to safety for potential airline passengers?
I have been made privy to conversations with commercial aviators who have received cease and desist orders.
So the American public should know that corporations are putting their own reputations on the not the line, but ahead of the safety of the American people. And I think, would you agree with that statement?
It appears so.
Okay.
All right, just going to pause it right there. So it's more than just fighter pilots and your average bumpkin in the backwoods that is seeing these things. It's a lot of other people, and they're all being told, be quiet about this. And we're going to find out a little bit further on in the show that if you are a fighter pilot and you want to keep your career, and you don't want to be seen as crazy because they won't give you any more flying if you start seeing things that they think is weird, then you be quiet about it. But this is happening all too much, and it's talked about under the breath of these fighter pilots, and they're like, okay, we got to do something about this, which is how this came about. What do you think? What do you think, Matt? Do you have any comments on that before we go on to the next clip? What happened to? Wait. I can't hear you, Matt. Is your Matt?
We're good. We're good. I had muted myself by accident. It makes sense that there would be this type of a cover-up, especially if you had more of like an older guard mentality, people who would hear about the UFO stuff and it just sounds so off the walls. You would start to think maybe they're kind of a little mentally unstable. And when you're flying equipment that costs tens of millions of dollars, you don't really want an unstable person in the cockpit of that vehicle. So it became a necessity, I imagine, for them to come together and say, look, we know what we're seeing. This is a real thing. They can't just shut us up and, even worse, end our careers over it. And here we are today. It has been a very long process, folks. Just keep that in mind. Everything that's happening here, these people are heavily invested in, and it didn't just get drummed up last week or a month ago or when the Grush interview broke. This has been happening for a very long time.
Absolutely. We're not only going to talk about that tonight, but apparently, and you've heard about crashes, right? The crashes of these UFOs, they've come from, and they're so advanced, and they come and they crash into our Earth. They've come billions and billions of light years away just to crash into our measly planet and tell you that Jesus Christ, is not true God. Because that makes sense. But I'm being sarcastic for those that don't understand. But the interesting part is that we found out a couple episodes ago that these things, the majority of, according to what they're going to say soon, under oath, that they've found craft. Now, we haven't seen any of that yet, so let's just throw that out there. But it's interesting that they say they found craft, and the majority of them have been left intact as a gift, it seems. They haven't crashed. Something weird's going on here. And as Christians, we're not saying that these things are absolutely aliens from another planet. What we think is probably absolutely physical deception. Matthew, you have a theory on that. Have you seen anything in the Bible that relates to physical deceptions?
Yes, you're referring to Exodus, aren't you? Where the magicians of Pharaoh were able to replicate the staff turning into serpents. They were able to replicate the blood, the water of the Nile turning into blood, and they were able to replicate, I believe, the lice. It stops there. I believe it's the staffs and the first two the first two plagues, which are miraculous, but the plagues. Those were physical deceptions. And I like to take the Bible at its word, and I like to say, okay, if it says that they turn them into serpents, it wasn't necessarily a sleight of hand magic trick as we know it, an illusion, so to speak. It was a staff turning into a serpent. So, yes, I believe they can manifest things physically for their own ends. But they're obviously, from the Exodus account too, we know that there's a limit to that capability. Because at a certain point they ran out of gas in the tank, and they couldn't perform any plagues. And God has infinite power, and He could just churn them out all day if He wants.
Right.
In His mercy, He only went up to 10, but Egypt could still have plagues falling on it today if God wanted that to happen. So,
okay, very good, very, very good. This is the unsanctioned programs that the government is running. This is out. This is in Congress now. They're saying this under oath. There is unsanctioned programs that the government is running, misappropriating funds to disassemble these things. That's what they said. I'm just telling you what the books say. Watch this.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself of non-human origin craft?
Yes, I personally interviewed those individuals.
Mr. Grush, as a result of your previous government work, have you met with people with direct knowledge or have direct knowledge yourself about ATs, advanced technologies that the U.S. government has?
Based on conventional advanced tech, I was briefed to the preponderance of the Defense Department's both space and aerospace compartmented programs, yeah.
Do you have knowledge or do you have reason to believe that there are programs in the advanced tech space that are unsanctioned?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that they're above congressional oversight, what do you mean?
Complicated question. So there's, some, I would call it abuse here. So congressional oversight of conventional special access programs, so I'll use Title 10, so DOD as an example, right? So 10 U.S. Code Section 119 discusses congressional oversight of SAPs, discusses the DepSecDef's ability to waive congressional reporting. However, the Gang of Eight is at least supposed to be notified if a waived or waive bigoted unacknowledged SAP is created, and that's public law.
Well, so that how does, I don't want to cut you off, but
Yeah.
how does a program like that get funded?
I will give you generalities. I can get very specific in a closed session, but misappropriation of funds and
Does that mean
self-fund.
that there is money in the budget that is said to go to a program, but it doesn't, and it goes to something else?
Yes, I have specific knowledge of that. Yep.
Do you think U.S. corporations are overcharging for certain tech they're selling to the U.S. government, and that additional money is going to programs?
Correct, through something called IRAD.
Okay.
IRAD. Do you know what IRAD stands for, Matthew? Mr. Military?
No, why don't you tell me, Brad?
I don't remember. It's something about, I had it. In fact, I looked it up when they said it. It's something about the, let's see, I'll look it up real quick. IRAD military. Someone's going to say it in the chat before I get to it. Independent Research and Development. Independent Research and Development. Yes, there you go. Tiny got it. You had it before I did because I'm about 4 seconds ahead of you, which makes me behind. So you would have heard me late. So yeah, you got it before I even found it. Brett, Tiny Tabernacle. Your name's not Tiny, Brett. So I should read the whole thing. So that's interesting. And if we have any military in the chat, I'd like to give me a raise a hand. Give me a checkbox or
do a salute.
A salute. Yeah,
salute.
yeah. The salute thing. I'd like to
drop
see.
a salute in there.
I appreciate
everybody.
that. Let me see if I find it. There we go.
But essentially, what he's talking about is that they're embezzling funds, and not only like embezzling them, but they're getting those funds through lying and saying, well, here's the price tag. And, we know how our government spends money. The U.S. government just prints money and throws it everywhere. There is almost no accountability. So it shouldn't be surprising that any sum of money is ending up in their pockets, and now illegal activities. It's like a criminal racket. It's kind of formed out like as a parasite onto the government. And I think that's interesting because now that they're pointing a finger and saying there's an illegal racket going on, and it gives you more of something to go after, right? Because if it's just, there's just some secret projects that are happening. Yes, certain people in the government are checking the boxes, but what he's saying is nobody's checking the boxes. They're rogue and they need to be stopped. It's a bold assertion, and it should probably grab the attention of more members of Congress because nobody likes to be taken advantage of.
I've often heard about these conspiracies or these, hey, the government's, lying to us and all this other stuff. We kind of know that because they have to say some things in order to get, make sure other countries' enemies don't find out about things. We understand that. But to the extent that we're finding these things out right now is kind of unbelievable. And to say they're misappropriating funds to disassemble these things so they can get, again, we haven't seen this stuff yet. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see a physical deception soon. So how do you find these things? Of course, Congress is going to want to know, how do you find access to these things? We're going to see that next.
I'm going to direct this, I believe, to Mr. Grush, but if any of you all feel like you need to jump in, just jump right in. We're good. Has the U.S. government become aware of actual evidence of extraterrestrial, otherwise unexplained forms of intelligence? And if so, when do you think this first occurred?
I like to use the term non-human. I don't like to denote origin. Keeps the aperture open, both scientifically. Certainly, like I've discussed publicly previously, 1930s.
Okay. Can you give me the names and titles of the people with direct firsthand knowledge and access to some of these crash retrieval programs, and maybe which facilities, military bases the recovered material would be in? And I know a lot of Congress have talked about we're going to go to Area 51, and and there's nothing there anymore anyway. It's just and we move like a glacier. And as soon as we announce it, I'm sure the moving vans would pull up. But please.
I can't discuss that publicly, but I did provide that information both to the Intel committees and the Inspector General.
And we could get that in the SCIF if we were allowed to get in a SCIF with you. Would that be probably what you would think?
Sure, if you had the appropriate accesses, yeah.
What special access programs cover this information, and how is it possible that they have evaded oversight for so long?
I do know the names. Once again, I can't discuss that publicly and how they've evaded oversight. In a closed setting, I can tell you the specific tradecraft used.
All right. When do you think those programs began, and who authorized them?
I do know a lot of that information, but that's something I can't discuss publicly because of sensitivities.
All right. If any of y'all want to jump in on any of this, you're more than welcome to. What level of security clearance is required to fully access these programs?
Well, anybody who has...
and I say that because myself, Representative Gates and Representative Luna were basically turned away at one point at Eglin. So please go right ahead.
Certainly difference between member access and, say, somebody like me, but anybody who has a TSSCI clearance and meets the eligibility criteria, the access adjudicative authority should be able to grant you access.
Mr. Burchett, if you'll yield, so just to put a fine point on that, there's nothing that you're aware of that's above special access program classification.
It's a misnomer that there's anything actually above top secret. Executive Order 13526 delineates the classification levels.
Right, but I draw a point on that because we can have access to those programs, and so the notion that we're not being given that access sort of defies our typical muscle memory here in Congress. Thank you, Mr. Burchett. I'll yield back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Gates. Along those lines, Title 10, you may not know this or not, but Title 10 and Title 50 authorization, they seem to say they're inefficient. So who gets to decide this, in your opinion, in the past?
It's a group of career senior executive officials.
Okay, are they government officials?
Both in and out.
Do what?
Both in and out of government, and that's about as far as I can go there. Yeah.
All right, well, that leads to my next question. Which private corporations are directly involved in this program? How much taxpayer money has been invested in these programs, to your knowledge? I mean, we know we audit the Pentagon every year, and I've been here 5 years, and they failed the dadgum thing every year. They lose over $1 billion a year, we think, and I've told the Department of Defense maybe 60% of their assets are unaccounted for, whatever the heck that means. In the public sector, you go to jail for that kind of crap. So tell me.
Yeah, I know when I'm a dollar off of my DTS travel voucher, I get hammered, but it seems like it doesn't work the other way.
If you sell over if you sell over $600 worth of stuff on eBay now, you get a call from the IRS. So please, what corporations?
Yeah, I don't know the specific metrics towards the end of your question. The specific corporations I did provide to the committees in specific divisions, and I spent 11 and a half hours with both Intel committees. So.
Okay, has there been an active U.S. government disinformation campaign to deny the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena? And if so, why?
I can't go beyond what I've already espoused publicly about that.
So it seems like a lot of negativity that he can't go into. But I want to suggest that the fact that he's absolutely here and he's saying, hey, I can't go into that publicly in this public hearing, but I will talk to you about it afterwards, is saying something. Because what's going to happen after this is these people who we've entrusted to watch over our government, they're going to take this stuff and they're going to run with it. And we're going to see that by the end of this program, because I have an after party that they did after this whole thing. And it's quite revealing. What do you think about all that, Matthew?
Well, Dave Grush wants us to talk in a SCIF, and for those of us who don't know what a SCIF is exactly, it's SCIF, and it stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information Facility.
Ooh.
And what that essentially is a space where there's all the preventative measures are taken, that there's not going to be any eavesdropping, or that the information will leak out. Tim Burchett, the senator, was saying that they were unable to get a SCIF. The question becomes, is it a scheduling difficulty because there's only so many of these facilities available, or are they being stonewalled? Is there someone actively working against them, seeing that request for the SCIF and denying it outright just based off of who wants it and for what purpose? I think that Dave Grush will end up being able to communicate this information to them, and it sounds like he's already communicated a good amount of information to other people, and the what was he saying? The Inspector General is who he's talked to, and he's given lists and names and that type of a thing. Just seems to be more, he needs to be able to disseminate the information a bit more, put it into more people's hands. And I mean, isn't that the definition of disclosure, really?
Well, I think it's interesting, too, because I actually read up a little bit on this, and it turns out, I'm not sure how many facts I have right here, so correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but he went to some of the higher-up military and said, hey, you guys, show me what's going on here, and they said, you don't have the high enough credentials to do this. Apparently, there are credentialed people inside Congress, and there's some kind of gang of 8. This is something I haven't read up on, so I don't know much about it. But there's people that are privy and those that are not. And he apparently didn't have the right access to this, and him and whoever that other girl was, Laura Croft, I forget her name, and they didn't have the right access, so they couldn't get information. But after some talks, they talked to the right people, and they gave him at least a little bit to whet their appetite. They got to see some pictures and stuff of things that would normally be classified. So it's interesting to see where this is all going because of that. But what was their names? It was it's going to drive me nuts now. Tim Burchett and Anna Paulina Luna. That's their names. Don't let me forget that. What do you think about it?
So I just want to address the Gang of 8 real quick. The Gang of 8 are basically, I have it right here, just a definition. The Gang of 8 is a colloquial term for a set of 8 leaders within the United States Congress who are briefed on classified intelligent matters by the executive branch. And if we look at the current sitting members of the Gang of 8, we see the 2 names that stand out, well, 3 names that stand out to me right away would be Marco Rubio, who has spoken on this UAP issue. He seems to be pretty invested in it, which makes sense if he's involved in this intelligence and the classified, if he's feeling like maybe a little slighted, something got past him that he's not aware of. Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, by the way. So, and Chuck Schumer recently came out talking about this and saying that we need to take it seriously. And Mitch McConnell as well, which Mitch McConnell just experienced, I don't know for anybody who's maybe outside of the news cycle, but he had like a really weird malfunction. He like glitched out at a little presser. It was really, really bizarre. If you get a chance, look it up after the broadcast. But he was in the middle of answering a question and he just like completely freezes. And then the aides are just saying like, Mitch, do you want to go to your office? Do you want to go to your office now? And he's just like, and he just gets led away. And then no one heard from him. And then his office released a statement saying he's fine. So he's fine. But anyway, those 3 names stand out to me. And I'd like to just point out that Chuck Schumer, being a Democrat from New York, is a very prominent Democrat. And Marco Rubio, I mean, he ran against Donald Trump in 2016 for the Republican nominee. You are going to see that this issue is going to unite the right and the left. It's going to happen. This is the issue where they're going to find the common ground and come together, and there won't be this really weird polarization around it. I bet there's going to be a lot of handshakes, a lot of hugs, and it's all going to be thanks to this issue.
And we're seeing that right now. I think even AOC Cortez, whatever her name is, she says that I think in this thing. And I don't know if I included that clip, but I thought that was interesting that she would even mention that. We're going to jump into hostile activity. This next clip is talking about the hostile activity of these craft, as they call them, the incompetent aliens that crash into our world, the multidimensional, as they're calling them. Check this out.
There's been a lot of things that have been said in the public, Mr. Grush. And so I want to get down to, if we can, some specifics, right? So at one point you had said that there has been harmful activity or aggressive activity. Has any of the activity been aggressive, been hostile in your reports?
I know of multiple colleagues of mine that got physically injured. And the activity, and I got
by UAPs or by people within the federal government?
both.
Okay, so there has been activity by alien or non-human technology and or beings that has caused harm to humans.
I can't get into the specifics in an open environment, but at least the activity that I personally witnessed, and I have to be very careful here because they tell you never to acknowledge tradecraft, right? So what I personally witnessed, myself and my wife, was very disturbing.
Okay. One of my constituents actually sent this next question, and I figured I'd ask it since I had the same thought. You've said that the U.S. has intact spacecraft. You said that the government has alien bodies or alien species. Have you seen the spacecraft?
I have to be careful to describe what I've seen firsthand and not in this environment, but I could answer that question behind closed doors. Yeah.
And have you seen any of the bodies?
That's something I've not witnessed myself.
Okay, and so with that being said, and the other statement that has been made that was intriguing to me it's intriguing because my view has been that we are billions of light years away from any other system. And the concept that an alien species that's technologically advanced enough to travel billions of light years gets here and somehow is incompetent enough to not survive Earth or crashes is something that I find a little bit far-fetched. And with that being said, you have mentioned that there's interdimensional potential. Could you expound on that?
Yeah, to answer your first question, and I'm here as a fact witness and expert, but I will give you a theoretical framework, at least to work off, to kind of espouse crashes, regardless of your level of sentience, right? Planes crash, cars crash, n number of sorties, however high, a small percentage are going to end in mission failure, if you will, as we say in the Air Force. And then in terms of multidimensionality, that kind of thing, the framework that I'm familiar with, for example, is something called the holographic principle. It derives itself from general relativity and quantum mechanics, and that is, if you want to imagine a 3D object such as yourself casting a shadow onto a 2D surface, that's the holographic principle. So you can be projected, quasi-projected from higher dimensional space to lower dimensional. It's a scientific trope that you can actually cross, literally, as far as I understand, but there's probably guys with PhDs that we could probably argue about that.
But you have not seen any documentation that that's what's occurring?
Only a theoretical framework discussion, yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, okay. I've heard that theory before about the 2D, 3D, 4D type thing. I don't know if there's any math that can prove that. If not, no, someone's going to say I'm absolutely incorrect in that, but I want to see the facts, and I like the theory. It's interesting to me, but show me the facts any day that prove this 40 thing. I'm sure there's something out there, but we don't know if these entities, whether they that we know are demonic, they're fallen angels. We don't know if they're on a 40 plane. I mean, some people even say that the fourth dimension is time. Well, we know that's not true because they're not in. You can't manipulate time. Angels can't manipulate time, and so absolutely, there's something else going on here. Whether they're just veiling themselves so they can't be seen, or they're entering some kind of different realm, we don't know. We see through a glass darkly right now. I don't know. Prove me wrong. What do you think, Matthew?
As far as time manipulation goes, there is a bit of what they refer to as the Oz factor, where Dorothy spent all that time in Oz, and in reality she was out for, I don't know, like however many hours in the movie. Haven't seen that in a very, very long time. But there's that, and I suppose it's like you're saying, they're here, but they're not quite perceivable. So that either means they're kind of like sideways to us, right? They're in terms of our reality. It's a hard thing to grasp when we start looking. Yeah, when we start looking into the mechanics behind it, there's a lot we don't know. We can just kind of describe it, and that's almost, it becomes a frustrating thing when you're trying to evangelize and tell people there is a spiritual world and a spiritual reality, that there are spirits who wish you harm, and the protection against them is to obey God. And God is a spirit. We know Jesus Christ taught us that. So this unveiling, I hope that we still have time to do some evangelism when they are revealed, because it's such a supernatural, paranormal thing. I just hope that once people say, whoa, there are alien beings, non-human intelligences now, we can say yes, and there is a God as well. And
Yes.
The arrival of these beings means that the arrival of Jesus Christ is right behind them.
Let's see.
And
I'm concerned about that too,
Yeah.
because the arrival of the Antichrist, a physical manifestation of Christ of Satan pretending to be Christ. Let's put it that way. And so, that's going to become the most confusing thing, because there you go. Look, it's right there. We do. Yeah, and they're going to say, okay, you believe in God. Yeah, we do too. Look, there he is.
no, not this guy.
Not that guy.
Yeah. And not only that, it's something that I don't want to see it. I don't want to interact with it. I've said it before. Our phones, the media, the way everything is set up, you're bound to see the information, the arrival of they're here. Mm-hmm. And it's going to turn my stomach if I have to see an image or a moving video of them. It's so repulsive, the idea, like my skin is crawling just saying it out loud. But I know that it's something that we'll have to contend with. It's going to be the reality that we're going to be living in. And that's the time of trouble that I think is being described. It's having these things among us. Right. I want to just look at Revelation 12:12. Here, one moment. Mm-hmm. It says, therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them, because Satan has been cast out. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. So that sums it up. That's the issue that we're going to be confronted with, is that the devil has come down to us in the same way that he was standing in the heavenly courts and making his petitions to the angels and saying, are you really going to follow him? Join me in my rebellion against God. Well, he gets kicked out. And of course, the inhabitants of heaven are like, yes, literally, thank God he's not here anymore. We don't have to deal with him. But then they look down and they're like, oh, those poor inhabitants of the earth, it's like now they have to contend with him, and he knows his time is short. He knows that he's only got so long before God's going to pull the plug on that. That's what we're going to be dealing with, and just like you were saying, they're going to say he's Jesus Christ. They're going to say that he's God. Yeah, so confused. Yeah. Not cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's going to be a strange, as Aliyah said in the chat, a strange new normal. That's the whole point of this channel. It's going to be a strange normal. I mean, that's what this is. It's the new age, in other words. Anyway, we're dwelling on that a little bit because that's the whole point of this channel, is to talk about this strange normal that's going to be happening here pretty soon. But I also want to touch on something they said at the very beginning: harmful, hostile activity. Harmful, hostile activity. That's what they said. I think that's interesting because how can you say that these things are absolutely good and they've come from so long far away and they must be superior in moral, and they come and they tease and they scare and they mess with us? That it said they're harmful and hostile, and we want to grant them what? Oh yeah, come on, you guys are ill. Let's baptize you.
I think I may have puzzled it out a little bit, Bradley.
Oh, yeah?
I think I know how they can have their cake and eat it too.
All right.
And the way that they do it is that they say, just like we have an understanding that there are holy angels and fallen angels, they'll say, well, there are good non-human intelligences and there are bad non-human intelligences. And unfortunately, both of them have been here. The ones that have been mutilating the cattle and killing people and harming people with radiation, that wasn't us. That was the bad ones. And we're here to get rid of them. Yeah. And the fact that they're setting up a hostile force, what I think is going to happen, and I'm gonna look over Matthew 12 for a moment. So when Jesus was casting out a devil, or devils, maybe multiple ones, but I know at least one. It says, but when the Pharisees heard it, and we're starting at Matthew 12:24. But when the Pharisees heard it, they said, this fellow doth not cast out devils, but by Beelzebub, the prince of the devils. And Jesus knew their thoughts, and said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, and every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. And if Satan cast out Satan, he is divided against himself. How shall then his kingdom stand? And if I by Beelzebub cast out devils, by whom do your children cast them out? Therefore they shall be your judges. If he's going to play the role of Jesus, he needs some devils to cast out. And it's funny because he's saying if they're not working together, if his house is divided, how can it stand? Well, these bad demons who are inside of them are in cahoots. They're working with it. It's that old trick where it's like, okay, I'm going to tap them on the shoulder 3 times and you get out, and then boom, here I am. I'm casting them out. And it's so twisted because I bet as Christians, when we point to that and we say, this is like a smoke and mirrors, a weird demonic trick, they're forging miracles and they're setting up demons to be cast out, you're probably going to hear Matthew 12 quoted at you, and they're going to say, oh, I mean, he can't cast them out. You're saying what the Pharisees said in Jesus' own time. You're accusing Jesus again, and you are the modern day Pharisee. You who are clinging to your Bible rather than as a Pharisee clinging to the traditions and the laws. You as a Christian are not getting with the times. You're clinging to the Bible and this testimony that's found in there. We've got this. The light is in the world with us now. He's back.
I think
I don't know.
We're seeing the beginning of that even just this week, of the religious idea ramping up in this ufology thing, and that's why we're doing Matthew. That's why you're putting together Monday. I have another clip I think that you should include in there. I'll show it to you after in the Discord. By the way, if you want to be a part of that Discord, go to patreon.com/strangenormal. Partner with us, because without your help, we can't do this, and we think this is a very important thing, because the 2 main things that are going to be major issues in the last day: worship and spiritualism. That's going to be the big things that are happening. So that's what this channel focuses on. Strangenormal.com, it was the website, or patreon.com/strangenormal.
Just look in the description. It's in the description. It's right there. It says join our Discord. Just click that link. You'll be fine. Don't memorize anything. We all have 5-second attention spans anyway.
All right. So next clip is story about the Congress trying to get into the deep government and realizing they can't. So here we go. Watch this.
Several months ago, my office received a protected disclosure from Eglin Air Force Base indicating that there was a UAP incident that required my attention. I sought a briefing regarding that episode and brought with me Congressman Burchett and Congresswoman Luna. We asked to see any of the evidence that had been taken by flight crew in this endeavor and to observe any radar signature as well as to meet with the flight crew. We were not afforded access to all of the flight crew. And initially, we were not afforded access to images and to radar. Thereafter, we had a bit of a discussion about how authorities flow in the United States of America, and we did see the image. And we did meet with one member of the flight crew who took the image. The image was of something that I am not able to attach to any human capability, either from the United States or from any of our adversaries. And I'm somewhat informed on the matter, having served on the Armed Services Committee for 7 years, having served on the committee that oversees DARPA and advanced technologies for several years. When we spoke with the flight crew, and when he showed us the photo that he'd taken, I asked why the video wasn't engaged, why we didn't have a FLIR system that worked. Here's what he said. They were out on a test mission that day over the Gulf of Mexico. And when you're on a test mission, you're supposed to have clear airspace. Not supposed to be anything that shows up. And they saw a sequence of 4 craft in a clear diamond formation for which there is a radar sequence that I alone have observed in the United States Congress. One of the pilots goes to check out that diamond formation and sees a large floating, what I can only describe as an orb. Again, like I said, not of any human capability that I'm aware of. And when he approached, he said that his radar went down, he said that his FLIR system malfunctioned, and that he had to manually take this image from one of the lenses, and it was not automated in collection, as you would typically see in a test mission. So I guess I'll start with Commander Fravor. How should we think about the fact that this craft that was approached by our pilot had the capability of disarming a number of the sensor and collection systems on that craft?
Well, I think this goes to that national security side, and you can go back through history of things showing up at certain areas and disabling our capabilities, which is disheartening. And for us, I mean, like I said, it completely disabled the radar on the aircraft when it tried to do it, and the only way we could see it is passively, which is how he got that image. So I think that's a concern on what are these doing, not only how do they operate, but their capabilities inside to do things like this.
And how should we think about 4 craft moving in a very clear formation, equidistant from one another, in a diamond? In all of the phenomenon, perhaps, Mr. Grave, that you've analyzed, have we ever seen multiple craft in a single formation?
I have one particular case, and that was during the gimbal incident. The recording on the AT FLIR system shows a single object that rotates. You hear the pilots refer to a fleet of objects that is not visible on the FLIR system, and that was something that I witnessed during the debrief as part of the radar data on the situational awareness page. I would like to add, however, Congressman, there's a small bit of anger, I would say. I would feel that those pilots are still facing that difficulty in reporting this topic, and they don't have the tools to be able to mitigate this issue. It just goes to show how serious this is and why this is such an important issue for our pilots and for our nation.
It was stated explicitly to me by these test pilots that if you have a UAP experience, the best thing you can do for your career is forget it and not tell anyone. Because any type of reporting, either above the surface or below the surface, does have a perceived consequence to these people, and that is a culture we must change if we want to get to the truth. Mr. Chairman, I would observe that perhaps as we move forward from this hearing, there are some obvious next steps. Every person watching this knows that we need to meet with Mr. Grush in a secure, compartmentalized facility so that we can get fulsome answers that do not put him in jeopardy and that give us the information we need. Second, I would suggest that the radar images that were collected of this formation of craft out of Eglin Air Force Base, and specifically the actual image taken by the actual flight crew that we can actually validate, be provided to the committee, subpoenaed if necessary, so that we're able to track how to get this type of reporting and analysis done in a more fulsome way. That would be my recommendation, humbly, as a guest here of the Fine Oversight Committee. I yield back.
Whew, that was long-winded, but he said quite a bit there. I thought was interesting. That was a story about Connors trying to get into the government to talk about this stuff. One thing he said was interesting was that they've disabled radars and all kinds of other stuff, and they made reference to, they didn't say it explicitly, but some of the stories that have been heard that aren't they aren't proven yet, but I'm suggesting they probably will be, are them disabling and enabling nuclear weapons. And so this is something that they kind of alluded to when they were talking about the radar being disabled by that. Any thoughts on that? Anything?
The whole tone of it has shifted, hasn't it? Mm-hmm. I think in the chat, our chatter here, Panda, brings it up. How serious this issue is, in quotations. All of a sudden, it's so serious, and they're right. It has become a very serious issue. If you look back a year ago in June, when they had the first congressional hearing, it was so flat. It was so dull. I mean, you really had to be into this sort of stuff to sit through it and listen to it. And a lot of people were just so fed up. They were saying, oh, this is not what we needed. This is not going anywhere. People were very frustrated by it. This recent hearing, people are celebrating. I mean, those who are ufologists are saying this was momentous. This is a historical hearing. This has pushed the issue further in the congressional lens than it ever has been before. It goes to show that things are heating up.
Yeah. And
Bradley, you did a little one-off broadcast recently, a surprise broadcast where it talked about how there was a time frame, correct? You had that?
Yes.
Show?
Yes, that was just this last one, and it talks about about how the New Age movement has correlated these dates, and they are represented the same dates in ufology. So that's a little interesting, that correlation there.
Yeah. And even beyond that, it seems that there is a belief held in the ufology community that there was some type of an agreement made with the non-human intelligences. so silly. But that they would disclose their existence to the public and that they would let people know. And that time frame seems to be in the late 2020s. It's really easy, folks, if to find out whether or not this is going to happen. Just stay alive for the next 5 years or so, and if nothing happens, nothing happens, and we're like, who cares, right? But if it does happen within that time period, it has to be fast. It has to be breakneck speed, and I think, just from what I'm seeing, it looks like I feel the speed cranking up. Does everybody else feel the speed? I want to know.
Yeah.
If you're watching this live in the chat, I want you to tell me if you think that things are picking up, if you've noticed that over the past couple of years, or if you're watching this recorded, leave a comment.
Yeah.
Let me know. I want to know what you think about this new rapid rate of disclosure and the seriousness with which it is being taken now by Congress. We just got to wait on legacy media to catch up. As soon as they stop playing the X-File theme, we'll know.
That's funny you should mention that. I actually say that. But the fascinating thing is, hit that like button on here. It really does help promote the video more, bring more people into the chat. By the way, it's interesting to me that they mentioned DARPA. DARPA is an interesting department or agency. Someone asked in the chat, what is DARPA? A Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. What it is this crazy department of the military, I guess, and they do like iRobot stuff. If you YouTube DARPA online, you will be scared out of your mind because they have like robots dancing and they look like they're human. I mean, that's their movements. They're able to stand up and walk around and jump and all these other stuff. And they have robot dogs and all kinds of stuff. It's kind of scary, but that's DARPA. I think that's DARPA. I'm second guessing myself now. But anyway, that was fascinating. I got wrapped up in the story. If you have anything, let me read what I got next here. Story about Congress trying to get deep into the government. That's one we just did. Has the government made contact with aliens? That's another question. And this time they're going to list specifics of those. They want specifics of those involved. Let's listen to what they say.
You've stated that the government is in possession of potentially non-human spacecraft. Based on your experience and extensive conversations with experts, do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries, yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So, and you may or may not be able to answer my last question, and maybe we get into a skiff at the next hearing that we have, but who in the government, either what agency, sub-agency, what contractors, who should be called into the next hearing about UAPs, either in a public setting or even in a private setting? And you probably can't name names, but what agencies or organizations, contractors, et cetera, do we need to call in to get these questions answered, whether it's about funding, what programs are happening, and what's out there?
I can give you a specific cooperative and hostile witness list of specific individuals that were in those.
And how soon can we get that list?
I'm happy to provide that to you after the hearing.
Super. Thank you. And I yield back.
Cooperative and hostile witness list. Wow. And I'm happy to give that to you after the hearing. That's not, hey, let's get into a skiff. That's we're done. I mean, here it is. And you guys can go out.
I've got it in my pocket right here.
I know, that's what I'm thinking. He's like, well, let me tell you. He's been making a list and checking it twice right now. Let me tell you what's going on here. And so that's where I think things are going to start coming down the hole rapidly, because even though he's not revealing a lot of stuff and people are kind of upset about that, it's particularly ufology. They're kind of like, oh, this guy. But he's got a list. I mean, he's got stuff, and he's prepared to tell everybody. And so once he has told the individuals that are ready to take action on this, we're going to see some crazy stuff happen. And that's how close we are, folks. And so I'm not saying, hey, I'm ready to see them bodies. What I'm saying is we're close to the end of time. Was that, you like that, Matthew? See them aliens.
Yeah, no, we're not like drooling over the idea of seeing the proof. I've got enough proof of this sort of stuff just through my faith in God. I know that this sort of stuff exists, right. And I know that the devil is crafty. I want to give a little shout out here. Liz Cruz, she said that this is what comes to mind, and quoted Isaiah 26, 20, and 21. Come, my people, enter thou into thy chambers, and shut thy doors about thee. Hide thyself as if it were for a little moment, until the indignation be overpast. For behold, the Lord cometh out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the earth for their iniquity. The earth shall also disclose her blood, and shall no more cover her slain. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, it's a little moment, isn't it? I mean, what an assurance. Mm-hmm. I always love going to the Word of God. Just totally. If there's anything that you do after watching this show, before you watch anymore, ufologist stuff or dip into it. If you want to be a part of the research, that's great. But go to the Word of God, because the assurances that you find there are such a comfort, and it really will just roll right off of you. I'm amazed at how I'm able to look at some of this really sinister stuff and see all the implications. And it's weird, it's dark, but it doesn't get to me. It's almost like a duck has its feathers, and you see when the water goes on its feathers, it just runs right off. That's what happens when I get into the Word and I see a verse like this. It just totally, I'm at ease. It's God has assured me that it's not going to be this prolonged thing. If he didn't do that, and I'm thinking the demons are going to be here and ruling over earth for who knows how long, like, God, where are you? What's going on? No, they're coming. It's true. But this time of trouble is a short while. So just, love that. Thank you, Liz. That was
Absolutely.
great.
Absolutely. 100. I'm chatting with people in the chat here. National security. So this is where this whole thing is going. Everyone wants to, the reason why the push is happening is because the government doesn't move unless there is a threat or there's something that's a problem. And so this has been pushed as a national security thing to kind of push things along. Listen to this, because this is how this thing is going to be pushed along here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here and the courage it took to come forward and again, the sacrifice that each of you have made. I serve on the National Security Subcommittee for the Financial Services Committee, so I really want to stay in the national security lane, if I may. So when we think about traditional adversaries and both us towards them and them towards us, we probe their capabilities. We look for weaknesses, and we collect that data, that reconnaissance for in the event we need it in the future. For each of you, yes or no question, based off of your own experience or the data that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs could be essentially collecting reconnaissance information? Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Mr. Grush?
Fair assessment, yeah.
Mr. Fravor?
Very possible.
Again, in the national security vein, is it possible that these UAPs would be probing our capabilities? Yes or no, Mr. Graves?
Yes.
Grush?
Yes.
Fravor?
Definitely.
Is it possible that these UAPs are testing for vulnerabilities in our current systems?
Yes.
Yes.
Possible.
Do you feel, based off of your experience and the information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs provide an existential threat to the national security of the United States? Mr. Graves?
Potentially.
Yes, sir, potentially.
Same answer, potentially.
I would say
Fravor.
definitely, potentially.
Mr. Graves and Fravor, in the event that your encounters had become hostile, would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, your aircraft?
Absolutely not.
Sir?
No.
Is based off of the information that you've been privy to, is there any indication that these UAPs are interested in our nuclear technology and capabilities?
Yes.
By external observation, sure, that could be a fair assessment, yeah.
Yes.
Is there any indication that the Department of Energy is involved in UAP data collection and housing?
I don't have an answer.
I can't confirm or deny that in a public setting.
And could you do it in a secure setting?
Yes.
Mr. Fravor?
No, I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I think I'm the last member to go, but there clearly is a threat to the national security of the United States of America. As members of Congress, we have a responsibility to maintain oversight and be aware of these activities so that, if appropriate, we take action. I would encourage the chairman to demand that we have any and all, but in particular Mr. Grush, talk to us in a skiff. And if that access is denied, I will personally volunteer to initiate the Holman Rule against any personnel or any program or any agency that denies access to Congress. Mr. Chairman, with that, I will yield the remainder of my time to my fellow colleague from Tennessee, Mr. Burchett.
Wow, very interesting. And I want to acknowledge Liz. Thank you for the super chat. She says that something that's very interesting, I think is actually good to point out here. She says, I'm just going to say it. I think Mr. Grutch is a non-human entity. Praise God for his word and comfort. So I think it's interesting because I believe at the end of time, whether or not Grutch is or is not, I think there will be non-human entities that manifest themselves and work along human entities, both good and bad non-human entities, both good and bad angels, those that are for and those that are against. That's going to happen. And so, what we could be seeing right now, we could actually be seeing some people in this room, in Congress, that are, for instance, the Bible talks about when angels appear, you don't see wings on their backs. This is a painting. This is the Catholic Church's idea of giant little cherubs, little babies flying with little wings on their backs. This is what people actually see in the Bible. When we read the Bible, you see primarily, all the time, men that look like men and they look human because they have physical features that men have. And so I think it's interesting to see that it could absolutely be people in here that are not actually people. I'm just saying, she's onto something. Hey, don't give me that smirk. It could happen. I'm just saying.
Well, I will say, in defense of David Grush, Ross Coulthard, the guy who came out with the interview from News Nation in the first place, recently made the comment that David Grush apparently is autistic, and said that because people were doing body language analysis of it. We showed a little bit of that on the channel when it first came out. And he said that maybe some people aren't aware of this and they haven't factored this into their analysis of his body language and his cadence, but he is an autistic man. And he said sometimes he can come across as weird in the way he says things, or his mannerisms can be a little strange. But Ross said anyone who is familiar with somebody who has autism, they'll easily be able to see that David Grush has that condition as well. In his defense, now that's not to say that anybody else there might not be. It could be Tim Burchett, for all we know. He puts on a good front, and then he's just going to peel it off. And
So are you interested to know more about reverse engineering these things? I think this is interesting that this is coming out in the actual under oath, because this is something that's highly debated even among ufology, especially Christians. And so for them to actually talk about this, I think is pretty weird. Check this out.
Mr. Grush, I might have asked this before, but I want to make sure. Do you have any personal knowledge of someone who's possibly been injured working on legacy UAP reverse engineering?
Yes.
Okay. How were they injured? Is it something like a radioactive type situation or something we didn't understand? I've heard people talk about Havana syndrome type incidences. What was your recollection of that?
I can't get into specifics, but you could imagine assessing an unknown unknown. There's a lot of potentialities you can't fully prepare for.
Are you aware of any individuals that are participating in reverse engineering programs for non-terrestrial craft?
Personally, yes. Mm-hmm.
Do you know any that would be willing to testify if there were protections for them?
Certainly closed door and assurances that breaking their NDA, they're not going to get administratively punished for so. Yeah.
I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Fascinating. I mean, even if it's a huge deception, it is really interesting that let's just take that just for a moment, because I know this is debated, and I can already hear people saying, emailing me. Listen, for a moment, take the goggles off and say, okay, we have craft on this earth that is not made by human hands. And whatever theology you fall under, potentially, wow. I mean, just for a moment, imagine what you could learn from that. The problem is that it's in the hands of the Defense Department. The Defense Department wants to use it to defend the country. They want to use it to kill people. And
Maybe not just defense. Yeah. Maybe offense as well.
yeah. So I think that's where the rubber meets the road, is that this plan has been devised for hundreds of years, and they know exactly what they're doing. And so that's what's going on here. They're fueling the war machine. And so what we've seen, what's interesting to me about this is that it could potentially, boy, I already hear the naysayers, it could potentially vindicate Bob Lazar. And if anybody knows about Bob Lazar, he is a very smart scientist that claims that he was offered to work on reverse engineering of these craft in the S4 area of Area 51, which is somewhere around Area 51 area. And no one believed him. There's been documentaries made about him, and he says, no, I absolutely. And the funny thing is that this is saying exactly what he's saying. So I'm not saying he's true. I'm just saying it's an interesting story. Bob Lazar is an interesting guy for this whole theme. And to talk about this under oath and say, yeah, we have craft that are being reverse engineered, you kind of got to scratch your head and go, what's going on here? So we know what's going on here. Right. What do you think about that?
I'd say originally I was in the camp that there was no physical craft or anything like that. I thought this was purely a like hallucinatory type of a thing, where you would see things, perceive things, but there wasn't actually anything sitting in a lab day in and day out where you go home, turn the lights out, come back, turn the lights on, and it's there, and you're working with it year after year. It begs the question, how did it get there? Where did it come from? I was thinking back to Roswell. And it happened in the late 40s. And Roswell, that was a long time ago. We're looking at 70 years. I imagine that anyone who was holding any significant rank at that time is dead and gone. So if there were corroborators, is what I'm saying, is if humans somehow, maybe under the influence of demonic entities, were able to craft something and present it, pretend it was crash landed, and then give it to them. This is a scenario that I've come up with and run through my head. It's hard. It's a hard thing to understand. But all those people would be dead at this point in time, and then we'd really just be running off of whatever story that was given to us. Napoleon Bonaparte, he had a pretty interesting quote, and he said that history is a set of lies agreed upon. And that, I mean, the guy's brother was like head of Masonic lodges. So I think that he knew a thing or two about the lies that we've all agreed to believe in. I mean, just to bring it back around, at this point in time, I have to conclude that it seems likely that there is some type of physical, we'll call it craft. I don't think it's really a craft. I think it's some type of demonic technology, either inspired,
right,
demonically inspired mankind, kind of like a Jack Parsons situation, came up with it, or they manifested it directly, and humans have been playing with it for decades at this point in time. But it is crazy.
Yeah, I think on Coast to Coast AM, it was the Blink-182 guy, Tom DeLonge, that said he channeled something that, or he heard someone that did channel it that said these entities told them. And again, this is demonic deceivers, but they were saying, yeah, these things have been created layer by layer, almost as if they were 3D printed in giant angel 3D printers on the moon or something. On the dark side of the moon, I don't know, but it's an interesting quote, but I don't put any facts into it. So why do we refer to these things as NHI? That's the question that I want to know. Why aren't they calling these things ET? And I think that's an interesting one. Watch this.
Mr. Grush, why is it that you refer to the phenomenon as non-human intelligence? Why deviate from the basis of extraterrestrial life?
I think the phenomenon is very complex, and I like to leave an open mind analytically to specific origin.
When you say specific origin, are you referring, can you elaborate on that for those that might not?
If it's a traditional extraterrestrial origin or something else that we don't quite understand from either a biological or astrophysics perspective, I just like to keep an open mind on what it could be,
Okay, and referring to your News Nation interview, you had referenced specific treaties between governments. Article 3 of the Nuclear Arms Treaty with Russia identifies UAPs. It specifically mentions them. To your knowledge, are there safety measures in place with foreign governments or other superpowers to avoid an escalatory situation in the event that a UAP malevolent event occurs?
You're referring to actual a public treaty in the UN Register. It's funny you mentioned that. The Agreement on Measures to Reduce the Risk of Outbreak of Nuclear War, signed in 1971. Unclassified treaty, publicly available. And if you cite the George Washington University National Security Archives, you will find the declassified in 2013 specific provisions in the specific red line flash message traffic with the specific codes pursuant to Article 3 and Article, also Situation 2, which is in the previously classified NSA archive. What I would recommend, and I tried to get access, but I got a wall of silence at the White House, was those specific incidents when those message traffic was used. I think some scholarship on that would open the door to a further investigation using those publicly available information.
So, so there's two things there. One, he's talking about that these things are mentioned in different laws, specifically between Russia. But I think the beginning was the most interesting to me. Why mention that these things are not necessarily extraterrestrial? I think I wonder if the language that the Pentagon uses was crafted by Christians. As we know, Lou Elizondo was in there and was frustrated because he couldn't get his Christian supervisor to allow him to go forward and disclose this stuff and talk more about it. And he said, you need to squash this project. We know what those things are. Those things are demonic. And so they've crafted this language because probably the people that created the language, created the rules and the laws inside the government, realize what this thing is. And that's encouraging. What do you think?
Well, the term extraterrestrial, what that kind of points to is that they're not of this earth. So I think removing that label, well, what are we left with? And they're of this earth. One of the main things that the ufologists have been saying is that it will shake people's religious convictions, especially in terms of creation. These non-human intelligences, maybe they're claiming that Earth has been their home before it was our home, and that they had a hand in creating humanity, and that they've been here all along. They've been watching us and monitoring us through our evolutionary process. I don't believe that, but obviously evolution is what is widely accepted, even amongst people who are nominally Christian. You'll see they'll do polls every once in a while, and it's just like, does evolution contradict your Christian beliefs? And people are like, no, there could be evolution. And also the Bible is true. It's like, how do those two, how do you reconcile those ideas? Don't understand, but okay. They could claim that there's been a guided evolution process and that they've been here this whole time. So they're not extraterrestrial, they are terrestrial. This is maybe their home planet, and they just introduced us as their children. Mm-hmm. And then also, sorry, this is so silly. Non-human intelligence, NHI. I want to say NIH for some reason. NHI. It also could be that they're not necessarily from another planet. They're from another dimension. Mm-hmm. We've seen that mentioned even earlier in the broadcast. So they don't want to say they're necessarily from another planet. They make the point, too, that, the nearest galaxy is like a billion light years or whatever away. How do they get here? It's so much easier to just brush that off if you say, well, we're interdimensional, so we just step into a little pocket and we pop out of the other side and we're wherever we want to be. We don't play by the rules, the physics of your world. So those are the two ideas I have. Is either they're from Earth all along, so they're not extraterrestrial, or they're from another dimension and they're not from any planet necessarily.
Another thing I've heard them say is that they monitor, with satellites and stuff, making sure that they don't know no ICBMs are coming in to hit the country, and they don't see these things. They don't see them coming from outer space. That's what they said. And they see them inside here, and more often they see them coming from the ocean, which is kind of strange to me.
Yeah.
So I don't understand that completely. I have theories about that. I mean, we don't know a lot about our oceans, and if these things are transmedium, then why not have a congregation or a giant meeting every 100 years under the ocean, or maybe cities of angels that live down there? We don't know.
Atlantis,
we don't know.
Bradley, don't you? Haven't you ever heard of the legend of Atlantis? Man? Come on.
That opens up all kinds of things, doesn't it?
An advanced civilization, it does.
Oh,
I think that the Atlantis is like this really weird thing, and I do think that the whole idea of them being underwater or having underwater bases, I think it probably will come to the forefront. Or even like you're saying, the dark side of the moon or something. But whatever the case is, they're based very close to us, rather than there's like a fleet or whatever beyond our sensors. Mm-hmm. I was also going to say, good mentioning. So not only do we have NHI, we have UAP, and even UAP has undergone a change, because start out with UFO. Everybody knows UFO. Even little kids know UFO, unidentified flying object. We all think of the little flying saucer, whatever. Then they go to UAP. It was unidentified aerial phenomenon.
That's right.
Okay? It's stuff flying around in the air. The official definition now is unidentified anomalous phenomenon, which no longer limits it to the air. It's just like you're saying. It could be the sea. It could be space. It could be wherever, terrestrial. Who knows? Maybe they have little caves that they live in.
I don't know. Yeah.
I have a feeling we'll find out soon enough, whatever the lie is.
I do too. I absolutely. On that note, I want to jump back to commercial pilots real quick, because I have actually at the beginning of this channel, we talked a little bit about, remember how we talked just in the beginning of the show about how commercial pilots are seeing this as well?
Yes.
I have a pastor who's also a pilot who I worked for many years. And I had him on the program. We were kind of tongue-in-cheek talking about the Bible and how the story in the New Testament, I think Paul talks about it, where he says he was abducted. And I used that loosely just to make a program. But I asked him about it and see what he thought about it. He said something very interesting. He says, I'm a pilot. I see these things. Check this out. Revelation 21:10 says that John had been abducted. As he said, I was carried away in the spirit, and John saw a new Jerusalem descending from the sky. Was John carried away by technologically advanced beings? And is this a giant city? Is it describing a UFO?
Well, of course, UFO is just an unidentified flying object. I'm a pilot, and I've encountered many UFOs flying. Sometimes they're later identified. Sometimes you can't tell what it is. But we typically think of a spaceship now when people say UFO. Well, this is a city in space. And, any Star Trek groupie has no problem believing in a city in space. We've got an International Space Station that theoretically, like Lego blocks, can keep on growing. So man's got that technology now. Why wouldn't God have that technology? To me, it's a very small thing. But when John was shown this and he sees the New Jerusalem coming down, he probably didn't leave very far from the earth. In fact, I think one place it says he was on a mountain, and he sees the city coming down. So he is seeing something that's coming down out of heaven to the earth. And the city is a flying dwelling place. But I entirely believe that's possible. You read other places in Revelation, it talks about like Revelation 12, verse 9, it said, therefore, well, actually, verse 12, it says, therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. So the Bible is describing intelligent creatures that can rejoice in heaven, or the heavens, which is, plural. It's beyond this earth. It's not just talking about, clouds where angels play harps or something. So, yeah, God has creatures out there, and how they get around probably varies from one creature to another.
So that's interesting. I mainly surrounded that clip with the rest of the story because I could have just used that portion where he talked about seeing things as a pilot. But I thought it was fascinating that he included that little portion in there that says, "Yeah, I'm a pilot and I've seen things, and I can't describe them. I don't understand what those things were that I saw." It's a good chance he might have seen a UAP. Of course, as a pilot, you don't talk about that. Just as the fighter pilot, don't talk about it, because then if you're seeing things as a flight and you're flying around, they might take your license away. Who knows? But I think nowadays it's probably a little less stigmatized. What do you think about that, Matthew?
Yeah, I think it was cool that he brought up Revelation 12:12 because we just had that earlier in the broadcast. So definitely knows that there are beings observing. Right. Fortunately, there are good beings as well as the bad ones. I imagine that he's not alone in seeing some weird stuff as a pilot. Anyone who's dealing with navigation equipment or any type of sensors, you're going to see weird stuff. I don't know necessarily if he saw it with his own eyeballs. Is that what he was kind of alluding to, or
I think so. I've been asking if I could get him back on the program. I've only sent him one email saying, "Hey, we should talk about this." But his focus is evangelism and the Bible, and so it's hard for me to say, "Hey, let's talk about your experience," because I don't want to give any glory to, what demonic entity he saw, obviously. But at the same time, I think it's a fascinating story that he included a little soundbite for. Maybe I'll ask him about it privately one time.
Okay, yeah, I'd be interested to know more if he would share, because I think it's important as Christians that we get out in front of this. The time is almost becoming too late to get out in front of it because it's getting away from us. It's getting away from everybody. It's gonna just smack into the earth like you wouldn't believe. So keep on sounding the alarm, people. Even if it seems to be falling on deaf ears. I'm telling you, if you're a Christian and you're saying, it's funny, my wife actually told me today, she was in at work and one of her coworkers said randomly to her, "Hey, did you hear? The government's saying that aliens exist now. Isn't that crazy?" This is kind of like a ditzier girl that she works with, and she's just said, my wife she's very upfront. She just said, "Yeah, I believe that there are aliens and that they're actually demons and that they're part of the end time deception, and it means Jesus Christ is coming back soon." And the girl said, "Yeah, I believe in Jesus too," and just kind of left it there. Didn't go any further. So at least all you could hope for is in that little interaction is if this stuff, not even if at this point, we'll just say when. It seems to be more of a matter of when than if this happens. The people who you've talked to, the seed that you've spread, hopefully it raises in their mind and they go, "Wait a second. I remember the conversation. I need to be leery about this. I need to be a little more cautious." Right. And maybe, just maybe, I'm going to open my Bible that's been sitting on my shelf collecting dust, because we've got a lot of Christians who are not in the Word. Well, maybe nominal Christians. I don't know. I don't like to pass judgment over people like that. I'm not the judger of souls, and I don't want to be. I'm so grateful that God has that position, because I would screw it up. I really would. But but I think that a lot of people, regardless of their level of faith, need to be opening their Bibles, so that when this happens, they can overcome the deception.
Absolutely. I think that's a great conclusion, but I have one more video. So check this out. This is the kind of the after show that I was talking about. It has a really interesting clip. It's about 3 minutes long, and it's concluding what they were all talking about, kind of like the main players in the party, and they're kind of talking amongst themselves. This is a Forbes video. Watch this.
You've talked about the bipartisan support for this. How fast can you get something moved along here in Congress and then ultimately have that declassification process and reform happen?
It's like a glacier. I mean, we get fight every step of the way. But I think the American public, and here's what's going to happen. A few of the big shots in Congress are going to get a call from some of their donors saying, hey, let's get to the bottom of this. And they're going to start getting interested. I've had so many congressmen put a bug in my ear saying, man, some of them have told me they've had sightings and they're afraid to say anything and they're glad we're doing it. So I think we're knocking the varnish off of it a little bit with this. Do I think, we're not going to bring you in a saucer or a little green man. That's not what it's going to be about. And I know y'all, every time you play this interview with one of us, you play the theme from X-Files. I get it. But the reality is the American public deserves to know. And you better be careful about a government that doesn't trust its people, because there's no telling what they'll pull on you. I'm sure Jared could say that a lot more eloquently, but.
I did earlier. But I want to give Tim a lot of credit going back to some of your questions, which is, this is a really simple hearing. It's about oversight.
And I'm a really simple guy. Is that what you're getting ready to say?
No, I wasn't going there. But it was really hard for him to get this scheduled. It was hard for him to get it scheduled. It was hard for Congressman Luna to get it scheduled. It was hard to get a room. It was hard to get staff on board. It was hard to get approval. Every single step that they had to go through to make this hearing happen next week, the witnesses, they were stonewalled, and they had to push and push and push. Again, if there's nothing to talk about, why was it so difficult? And that, again, is what breeds these theories and these concerns. And so I think the best thing that can happen, quite frankly, just to end this whole debate is just like, let's hear the testimony and let the government come forward and figure out what they have and share it with the American people.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Can I clarify, do you expect next week's hearing is the start of a series of hearings you guys are going to be allowed to have, or do you think this is like your one shot?
I think that it's probably going to be the start. What Representative Burchett, myself, and my colleagues behind me have realized is that ultimately, as elected members and being assigned to House oversight and accountability, we can conduct field hearings. And if we continue to get stonewalled, if we smell that they're giving us a bunch of BS, we are going to do the field hearings directly at locations, and we're going to open it up to the press, because full transparency really is what we need in this situation. And ultimately, to piggyback off of what all my colleagues have said, the military, the Pentagon, the intelligence agency, they answer to the people and thus Congress. And so we are going to hold them accountable.
So there you go. This isn't the end. This is only the beginning. And they are planning to do a lot more, or you're going to see a lot more content coming out here on Strange Normal. So make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell icon, because you ain't seen nothing yet. You really haven't. This is going to get absolutely nuts. Go for it.
The ball is rolling. Cat is out of the bag.
It really is.
And you heard her say it's about accountability too. Like I had mentioned earlier, now that they are pointing this more in this is an illegal type of a thing, that has a lot more steam behind it than just, oh, there's aliens, oh, there's craft that's somewhere. They're misappropriating government funds. What? You can't steal from the government? We'll get them yet. And that's part of it too. I think it's cool. Yeah, Tim Burchett, he seems to be really into this. I feel like he's the rising star as far as politicians in the UFO realm. Because you're right, I didn't even know he said. I didn't know he said that, but he mentioned the X-Files clip, and or the X-Files theme being played over all of the stuff, and people making a mockery of it.
Yeah,
that's something that I've noticed just time and time again. We do it on this show. Whenever we have to show anything from a mainstream media outlet or even some of the lesser alternative outlets, depending on who it is, they make all of the UFO segments a joke, and it's for no reason either, other than to just mock it and
stigmatize it.
Yeah, right, and stigmatize it, because it's like, oh, we're gonna talk about something weird for a little bit, and then they go into it, and they have someone come out in a Green Man outfit, and they're like, "Oh, there he is! He's in the studio."
So that goes to show you, though, how much media has an influence, even if they don't even say it. The music they use, the way they talk about it, the emphasis they use on it, it all can affect the people. And they are using that, and it has been used for years and years and years. Not only just in media, but in theater, in art, and it's affecting the minds. I forget what king said this, but he says, "I'm more afraid of the poet than I am of the other kingdoms," or something similar to that. But that's it. That's all she wrote. So you want to close us with prayer, Matthew?
Yeah, I can do that. Why not? Father in heaven, thank you for the opportunity to broadcast and come on here and examine some of these and share some scripture as well. It's so wonderful being able to study your word and then contrasting it with the reality that we're living in right now. You are truly good, honest, and righteous, and you deserve to be God. You deserve it more than any other being. You're fantastic. Thank you so much. Just please keep our minds safe and secure, and don't let us feel any anxiety towards these happenings. Let us just have your peace, the peace that surpasses all understanding. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Matthew. Hang out for just a second. We're going to do a small little short after show. I know it's late, so I'm not going to stick around for very long, but please hang around for just a second. Guys, thank you so much for what you've done. If you want to join us, chat with us on Patreon or on Discord, join patreon.com/strangenormal. My name is Brad. This has been Pure Strangeness, Absolute Normalcy, Strange Normal. See you next time. Thanks for watching this segment. Subscribe to our channel and join us every Thursday night for more daily strange topics and more. Find us on Discord by accessing patreon.com/strangenormal. See you there.